your network is your net worth. And when you start out, you have no net worth and you have no network. But that network, if you invest in people, will pay off. And I look back at our investments very early on in our relationship with Gary Vaynerchuk, who this book would not have been a success without him. We did a 3-hour live stream. We were introduced by him to, I think, hundreds of thousands of people.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast where I bring you the best and the brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your life and career forward. Folks, we have a big one today. I've been waiting for this one. I don't read every book because I get a lot of books, but this one I had to read. Please welcome Kass and Mike Lazarow, serial founders, visionary early-stage investors, and best-selling authors. Over the past 3 decades, they've built and sold companies like Buddy Media to Salesforce for $750 million with a B, and golf.com to Twitter. That's a great story you'll find in the book. As investors, they've backed more than 100 startups, including billion-dollar breakouts like Scopely and Liquid Death. And their debut book, Shoveling Shit, a love story about the entrepreneur's messy path to success, is out now. It became an instant New York Times, USA Today, and LA Times bestseller, praised for its raw honesty about what it really takes to build a business. And they've been recognized as top leaders and game changers in cancer research, a cause that's very, very near and dear to my heart now, if everyone's following my story. Sought after advisors, helping entrepreneurs cut through the noise and the BS and scale with clarity and conviction. Let's get to it. Mike and Kass Lazarow, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
I'm excited that you're here. You're excited. I'm excited. Let's get into it. So first and foremost, I got to give praise to this book. I got to give praise. I loved reading it. It was quick. It was impactful. It was jam-filled with so much actionable information. And I truly felt, without having a conversation with either of you, that I was talking with you. And I have to assume that was the intention, right?
Yeah, definitely. We wanted to make this the most authentic book we could write about entrepreneurship. And then secondly, we wanted to have it, both of our voices like represented, and we talk very, very differently. And obviously we have very different skill sets. So it was important to us that it felt real, it felt gritty, it felt authentic, and you could hear ourselves talking right to you.
That's exactly what it was. It was coming through my ear, and I could feel the back and forth. What was that process like in like the writing process? Were you guys sitting down and recording it and going back and forth? What was that like?
So the writing process started in I would say it was a little rough at the beginning. And the reason is because we do very different things. We've started 8 companies together. I'm the one who's raising money and doing product and doing the sales. Kass is very much internal, HR and PR and some of the marketing stuff, finance. And so although we work together, we don't work together. So we don't sit next to each other, as you see right here. We're not meeting all day. We come together and we talk about our priorities and our focus and what we're doing. When you write a book with someone, you're working together. You're sitting down and you are battling it out over ideas. And so we'd never done this before. And I wrote the first chapter with some ideas, and Kass comes back and says, I don't really like it. It's not doing it for me. Okay, let's talk through it. And we needed a few reps to get comfortable writing together, outlining together, editing together. There's some stuff that I could write because I experienced it. Other things that it was, had to be Kass's voice. She had to write. How do you provide feedback to someone that you've worked with, but you've never done this with? And so after the first week or two or month, it became much smoother, let's say.
So Kass, this is a new venture. This is a new venture. I mean, you guys have done so many things. You've built so many companies and lifted others up. And now you're trying to do something that you haven't done before. What did you learn about this process, going through it with Mike and specifically in the overall book writing process?
I think there are a couple of things. First of all, the only other time I think we've ever been in the same lane is parenting, which is very, very difficult because, as you know, you can't fire your kids. nor put them on a pip, which I would love to do.
Oh my God.
Um,
No, I've done that before. Sorry.
I've tried. We've tried. But the writing process, I had kept literally an outline of all the different lessons over the last, 25, 30 years. So for us, like, I had all the outlines. I'm very detail oriented when it comes to outlines, probably do it all wrong, probably too many words. So the writing part wasn't the hard part for us. I think it was more making sure we got the voices correct and how we figured out how to tell the audience, the readers, who was talking and who was sharing everything.
Yeah, it's very, very well done. So let's just talk about the title for a minute here. What made Shoveling Shit resonate with you more than a traditional business title? Was that a marketing decision or was that a gut inside decision?
It was a second title that we loved. The first title was called Entrepreneur, which we thought was funny and captured kind of the same kind of ethos of shoveling shit. We looked around, there were some people who were using it. And so then we went back to the drawing board and we just kept coming back to this idea of like, entrepreneurship is a series of frustrations. You show up to work, the shit hits the fan, you have to start shoveling. And so we constantly kept saying like, entrepreneurship is just shoveling a lot of shit. And at the end of the day, that's what we remember, all the hard work. And so we loved it. We then talked to our publisher and others, and they hated it. You'll never get the New York Times bestseller list. You'll never get like in bookstores. And we just stuck to our guns because we said, listen, like it is true to entrepreneurs, and all the entrepreneurs we spoke to just loved it. Like, yeah, that's my life, shoveling shit. And so we stuck with it. And, luckily enough people bought it. The New York Times, USA Today, LA Times, it hit those lists in the first week. And it's off and running. It's been selling ever since.
The other X factor here is the spelling on entrepreneurship is one of those words that I never spell right. And I think that if people do it from from like an SEO perspective too, this is a lot easier, but I get into it. So Kass, you guys describe entrepreneurship as shoveling failures and scoring a win a day. How do you stay motivated with all the setbacks? And I find this hard for me as an entrepreneur, but for what I do, it's always the North Star in focus, eye on the prize. But like we take a lot of punches. We duck, we punch back, right?
Yes.
We throw jabs, right? But it gets tiring. Like, how do you do this every single day for so many years?
My background I was an athlete growing up. I played college tennis and golf. And I think that discipline comes in really handy because you're not always winning. In fact, most of the time you're losing, right? And I think that really helps because I had so many reps of losing and then you just play the next match, right? And so for us, it was that idea that, okay, I'm used to getting punched. It just means, and for real entrepreneurs, it just means you're one step closer to figuring something out. It's not the end. It's just more data. So I think that's how we've always operated, that getting punched in the face, having something fail is good. It just means we cross something off the list.
You triggered something from a sports analogy, and I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm a huge Mets fan, and as you can see by my hat here, and the Mets are known for their failures and comeback, but baseball is a game of failure. If you succeed 34% of the time, you're a Hall of Famer. What other business or sport could you have those kind of numbers and still be at the top of your game? But the point I'm trying to make here is it's learning and it's adapting. And there's this crazy kind of stat I heard about how really good hitters have no problem going 0-2 in the count with 2 strikes against them because they're waiting for that pitch, because they're trained to hit that pitch. And there's so many analogies in the business world where you're waiting for that moment, right?
That's right. It's like
and
synchronicity.
I think the difference, well, I mean, I think the baseball analogy is a great one, but the difference is business is you're at bat, but there are 10 pitchers firing fastballs and curveballs at you, and you need to figure out which one to hit, which one to pay attention to, right? And so it's this idea that everything's stacked against you, at least going from 0 to 1, you're in the dark. And as you get better at focusing. And by focusing on the right things, you start hitting it out of the park. But if you're not focused, you're not going to get on base.
But that takes time. Talk a little bit about your journey of really, and this just hit me in the last year and a half, and I'll talk offline about this in a moment here, is seeing and more importantly, hearing the signals through the noise. How could entrepreneurs focus on signal versus noise? Like a dog barking noise.
Sorry about that. So the biggest thing, when you think about being an entrepreneur, and I think a lot of people, especially when they start a company, they get really far away from this, is picking their head up and kind of processing the feedback around you. Are people, especially customers, your target audience, are they giving you any signals that would suggest that they don't want what you're building, right? And I think that's a big lesson and a cheat code that Mike and I learned very, very early on. You can build whatever it is you want, and you can be super passionate about it. It doesn't matter. What matters is someone going to be excited and buy it from you? So we really got into a great routine of getting pilot customers, even if they got onto our platforms or software for free, because those were the people who were going to help us solve issues for other clients. They became our brand advocates. They gave us the feedback we needed, and they helped us solve issues going forward.
Let's talk about feedback for a moment here. And Claude Silver works, she's Chief Heart Officer over at VaynerMedia. She's a dear friend, and her episode is coming out right after this one. So there's the shameless plug there. But she talks a lot about, Kass, how feedback is a gift, right? And how you should take it as a gift, because if someone gives you feedback, it means they care. And we're not just talking about unsolicited BS feedback here, but that means they care. Because if someone doesn't care about you, they don't give a shit, and they're not gonna spend the time to do that. Was that something that you took to heart immediately when you guys first went out with golf.com and you were working out of your, one bedroom apartment? Or was it something that you had to grow into in receiving feedback?
I think we had to grow into it. I mean, look, I don't know, Mike, what do you think? We were like 26, 27. You were much younger.
Babies.
Mike is younger than I am.
I still am.
You still are. It was a good one, Mike. I don't know, like when you're that age, you haven't really received a lot of feedback about anything but grades and winning something, a competition, a sport, a team thing. So yeah, you have to grow into it. And you also have to be able to receive it and take the good parts of it.
I speak dog. The dog agrees.
I mean, at the end of the day, Kass is an athlete. And Kass was very good at feedback because you got a lot of feedback all the time, in practice with coaches. Then you thought you were prepared. You go on to the court and you would win a lot of times. You'd get, your ass handed to you. It's more difficult, I find, with male entrepreneurs who didn't play sports like myself, because, I got grades. I got feedback, but typically the feedback wasn't that negative, right? When you start a business, it's basically no, 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 no. Like you get so many no's that you're like, am I ever going to get out of this mess I'm in? We got one today, which really stung, and we got feedback from it, which immediately we're putting in motion to kind of rectify, right? And so we love it. I mean, the negative feedback is our fuel.
Absolutely. And so, the truth is too, like when you have, like, I remember our first like real scary board meeting at golf.com when we had to basically start the whole journey over and recap, get more funding. And we had these two, sharks on it. And, Mike tells this story in the book where, I'm sitting there, I was the president, and I'm like going through, how are things going? They're going pretty good, right? They're going pretty good. And how are sales? And Mike's like, they're not too bad. And then the guy just slams his hand down, Matt Sarovich, and says, the top of his lungs, don't shine the turd. Not
don't
now,
turd.
Not ever. And, that I think is literally burned in our brain. It's burned in our brain that authenticity, transparency is a must when you're an entrepreneur.
It is a must, but I find, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but especially early stage entrepreneurs, they get so defensive and they take it personally. How do you coach them? How do you coach them offline that this is not personal when it is personal? Because this is your baby. This is your business. This is everything you put it into.
So most of that, and I take a lot of that on when, I'm basically working with the entrepreneurs and the founders. That's just ego. It's 100%
Mm.
ego, and I just pretty much name it. I'm like, do you think you're coming from, a place of protectiveness, or is it about your own ego? Is it that you've told stories about yourself that now are, kind of connected to who you think you are, to your parents, to your loved
Mm.
ones, to the board, to investors, to friends? And you have massive fear that by having any change, any movement away from that, it makes you less than. So that's really what you have to get to.
I want everyone out there listening to pause on that, hit the 30, 45-second rewind, and listen to that again. Leave your ego at the door. I know it's hard. And as I mentioned before, as a recruiter in this space, I'm deeply involved with a lot of the new technology coming out there, especially in TA and recruitment, sourcing, screening, AI interviewing, and everything. And I see so many products coming out there from tech founders that don't have any recruitment experience. And they reach back out to me and they ask me as a recruiter in the space for feedback. And then they push back on it like I haven't been doing this for 10 years. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not going to work. That's not
Exactly.
going to work. And I could feel it in their voice and their energy that they're getting defensive. I'm like, I'm just trying to give you actionable feedback. And if you can't park that at the door, you're coming to me for advice, then I don't know if this is going to be a good relationship, right? Keep me straight here. It's okay to say no if it's not vibing.
Right. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, there's both kind of the feedback, but one step before that is, one of the most important parts of the book, which has really resonated with a lot, is how you focus in the first place. How do you set priorities? How do you determine what's important and what's not? And, it's important enough that we have a whole chapter on it, but also you see it influence other parts of the book. And what we've found is when you do planning up front, whatever the stage is. So say you're an early stage founder. Okay, we don't have anything. What are the 5 things we need to do to hit our vision? Say the vision is the number one provider of AI interview tools, right? Okay, what do we have to do? Got to build the product, got to get customers on board, got to hire a team, whatever the 5 things are. Okay, did you build the product? Let's go through what the goals were. And each of these have metrics, right? So it may be just bring 5 customers on board. I love software companies that just focus in on 5 customers, because if you could get 5 customers successful and happy with your stuff, you will get 5,000. There's nothing about those 5 that are going to be that unusual, right? And so then when a founder comes back and says they're killing it, I'm like, okay, you're killing it. Let's look at what you set out to do. You only have 1 customer, your product doesn't work, and no one will work for you. So what part of that is killing it? I'm not seeing it, right? So it's that initial step of identifying what success looks like, because when you do that, you can't tell yourself stories. And as entrepreneurs, we love telling ourselves stories. We love saying that we're crushing it. We love looking at one little deal and extrapolating that like we have the whole business figured out, where we may be losing 10 other customers and like people are leaving. So, that's such a huge part of this.
That was one of my favorite chapters in the book, the very simple yet focused checklist that you guys go through when evaluating an opportunity. I want everyone to pick it up and read it, because I'm not going to go there right now. We're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about, hey, we could do that. You guys have done 1,000 podcasts. It's all in the book here. But what I want to focus on, because people, recruitment, hiring, talent is my world and what I live in. And I love the chapters here. So I got to ask you guys, Kass, do you think if we look back at Buddy Media 2007, and the culture and the way you built the team there with everyone in the office, how would that translate now in this remote work from home, distributed kind of workforce? How would it translate, and what might you do differently?
So I think it's much harder when you have a hybrid world. I think we press upon all of our portfolio companies to have a budget. Like when they raise money, there needs to be a line item for travel, so that the founders, if not even the management team or the leadership team, they travel once a quarter to the different hubs. It is a must. And if it was up to us, every single company would be in person. It's the only way to operate effectively, in our opinion.
So let's dig into that a little bit, because I there's obviously different schools of thoughts there. I hear a lot from, like, if I'm an engineer, why the hell do I need to be in front of people all day when I'm in front of my screen all day coding and everything, versus someone in marketing, relationship management, customer care, customer success? Is it ubiquitous, that rule, that everyone should be under, one office? Or are we not taking advantage of a distributed workforce where I could find someone great in North Dakota that doesn't have to schlep to New York?
I do think you have a point when it comes to engineers. I definitely see that. They have a different way about focus and different times in which they work. I do think, though, if you went back in time and asked our entire company if they thought it would have gone as well if the whole engineering team or most of them were abroad, and we did have offshore teams to do some things, literally, I think all of them would say they gained something about being inside the office, about seeing the founder's energy, about hearing bits and pieces and having the repetitive talk about what is the mission, what are our top 5 goals, and how each and every person is connected to that. So it's not just like, oh, you can get this remote workforce. It's how do you keep everyone on the same page? Well, you have to talk to them. You have to lead by example, and you literally have to show them physically what you are doing to move the company forward.
Yeah, I love that, because a part in the book too, even like simple things that are actually much more complex in team building is, you talk a lot about in the book when new hires come on board, they're assigned to a team, kind of like the Olympics, right? Or color war, if we're going back to a summer camp analogy here. And you feel that connection. You have a bond. You have like a tribe that you're part of. You have that support system. I don't think that translates remotely.
It really doesn't. It doesn't. And I feel like it's not just that you can quietly quit or not pay attention, but one of the greatest things we did at our companies was get people bonded from different kinds of experiences that weren't just related through work. And what that does is when you have to pivot, like we did 3 or 4 times with our last company, it makes them more loyal to you, right? Because you've been radically transparent and you've given them opportunities to not only see you in different lights, especially with, supporting causes like Cycle for Survival, but they also see that you are not this like workhorse that just cares only about the business. You have to think about like the long game here too. You are going to have to change your mission or your values or your, business model. What happens then? And how do you protect that team? How do you protect that culture? If you don't see them literally, physically, what is keeping them there versus saying like, I don't feel like it.
It's just a commodity then, right? Like that's all. You're just phoning it in and you're doing your job and you're just almost like an external contractor at that point. You guys talk a little bit. Well, let me backtrack. I hate the expression work-life balance. I don't think that's a real thing. I like to use the word harmony. There's times when we're busting our ass and we do what we got to do as entrepreneurs. And then for me personally, when I check out, I really like to check out. Yes, if there's urgent things going on, I'll be touching base with my email, but like I'm not doing follow-ups. But you talk about the imbalanced life framework and how it rejects a traditional work-life balance.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit and why that could be healthier for founders?
I think that founders need to know that like we look at it as work-life integration, right? Instead of balance. There are going to be times in your life where your work bucket is taking all of the power, right? There's no fuel or very little fuel for other things. That could be your partner, your family, friends, whatever. We didn't have a lot of friends when we were outside the company, when we were building our company, right? And so there's a hit, there's a toll. And so it's really trying to stop saying like, oh, I've got to be in balance, and to say it's okay, right? As long as your eyes are open and you totally know what you're sacrificing and what the consequences are. It's okay if I choose this. What's not okay is to say, oh, I'm going to work, 90 hours a week and I'm still doing a great job at home, right? You can't say that. So you have to be realistic, and it's okay to choose something as long as you know what the consequences are.
You guys are very real in the book too, about talking about that time, lack of a better word, lost with your kids when they were younger. Like, are there regrets to that, and how are you making that up now? I mean, you're talking about your sons and your daughter going off to college. Like, how do you can't go back in time. you can't go back in time, but you can only make the time that we have now count. So how do you do that? What advice would you give to other, founders who have, kids? Clock is ticking.
So I think the biggest cheat code that we have is quality over quantity. Don't beat yourself up over not being able to get there for every dinner and everything. But when you are with your kids, you have to dial it in. You have to meet them where they are. You have to do what they want to do. You have to, be there for them, listen,
Yes,
validate, right? And so that part has really hit home to us even as investors, because we work now with, invest in about 100 companies, and we work with a lot of founders. And, I really believe that personal health for the entrepreneur is business health. If you are not healthy mentally, physically, as the founder, your business will suffer. And we have so many stories that involve bad decisions made by founders who were not at the level that we expected when we invested. They had, we invested in founders who basically let their health decay and they become a new person.
That's heavy too. But I want to go back to one cheat code that I have that's so tactical. And when wifey and I get home for work, when we sit down at the dinner table, we physically put our phones away. We physically move the phones away from their table because we are trained. We're trained. Even when I do podcasts, my phone is on the charger upside down. So I'm not getting it. So I'm present here. I'm not looking at messages here, but there's simple things that you could do. And you can't make everything. I try to make every one of my kids' baseball practices to take them there and do that. But I also have to keep the business moving as a solopreneur, right? With a small company here. Like it's a lot of balance. And I've really come to this revelation, and you hit the nail on the head. It's quality over quantity, and to really be present and mindful. And another thing that we do is, because I'm a cynical New York Jew over here, right? And I say no a lot. I say no a lot. And my wife's like, you're always so negative. So we started to do yes days where daddy could only say yes to a certain extent of things. But that started to shift things in my head. Could that be applied to entrepreneurs?
I think that mindset could be applied. I don't know if
Can't say yes
I
to
would
everything.
love, I don't know if I would love if, I'll give you an example, engineers came up with ideas and we just were saying yes to it,
That's not gonna
because
work.
I think protecting the roadmap of any idea is like of the utmost importance. But I think that mindset of we're going to figure it out, like we can do things, and having the ability to reframe, because really what you're talking about, Adam, is reframing, right? Your family was saying, stop saying no so much, say yes. So it's just a reframe. I think mindsets that are able to reframe and look at things in a different perspective are the ones that succeed most often.
Hey everybody, Adam here from the Podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by the team at Fountain. Fountain is your full-service frontline workforce management platform. I have to tell you, Fountain's offerings are some of the most robust I've seen for any product in the space. They offer full solutions for hiring, managing, and retention. They are truly a one-stop shop focused on the frontline workforce. They also create informative content using their data. For example, they analyze a bunch of data from their fast food chains and created a trend report you could download now on their website. They also have a new ebook out called Frontline Voices. There's a lot to dive into. Certainly check it out. And you can learn more at fountain.com, linked in the show notes. Thank you. I love that reframe, but it also applies the other way too, because I've also learned in the last couple of years the power of saying no, because I was a yes man. I would say yes to everything, every opportunity, every media thing, every little thing, request that came in, and you really have to mind your time. And I learned from Dave Meltzer, I'm sure you guys know Dave,
Yes, the best.
to be a student of your calendar and hyper focusing on time, and especially when it comes to hiring. And I'm shifting a little bit here, but the problem I have with a lot of companies when it comes to hiring is that they're not prioritizing. If people are the most important part of your business, why isn't that process the most important business? And you're not
Agreed.
blocking out the calendar. And that starts from the top. That has to come from leadership and say, we need to fill. Either there's new roles that are expanding and we need to grow the team, or there's attrition, people leaving, people get let go. And now what you're doing is, if you're not prioritizing as a leader, that's going to trickle down where people are doing 2 or 3 times the work. I see it every single minute of my job here. How do you guys coach founders on the overall hiring process and like that mentality of how to keep it top of mind, because it's the most important?
Well,
So
that
we
That's a long
continue-
shift. Sorry about that. Yeah, geez, sorry. That was a long-winded way I got back to center on that one.
It flows from what we were talking about with focus, that if you understand where you want to be in the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever the time period is, you know what you think it's going to take to get there. So here are the top 5 things you got to do. Here are the metrics. Hiring should be in service to a plan, right? We got to take that mountain. In order to get there, we need the following people. And too many times, especially in tech, I see founders looking at like the number of employees being a vanity metric, right? I want to, we have 100 employees, 200 employees.
We're growing so fast. Look at us.
Well, what would happen if you only had 50? Maybe you would go faster, right? And I also think that, there are a lot of people in organizations who don't know how they level up to the organization's success. So you may want to be the number one software for AI interviews. You have someone in customer success who has no idea how their day-to-day levels up to that, right? So not only does the organization have to be focused, individuals, and especially the managers running teams, need to understand how their work contributes to the overall company's success.
That's an interesting perspective. And I think kind of building on that too, I think a lot of companies feel the need to promote people by giving them manager titles, but not everybody is meant to be a manager. And I do this every single day.
Oh my gosh,
some folks
yes.
are just really good ICs, right? They're individual contributors, and that's all that they want to do. Why do companies have such a problem with saying, hey, Kass is great at what she does. Let's just continue to, yes, let's bump her salary. We could bump her title, but keep her as an IC. And someone is reaching up to say, I want to lead people. Why can't we invest in them and train them? Why do companies have these blinders on? That's the only way to promote is to give leadership.
Yeah. I don't know why people have blinders on. And the hardest thing you can do as a founder is not only hire, but figure out how everybody fits. Like I called it moneyballing in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Like as you change, as you grow, as you scale, how does everyone fit? And it's not always that you promote from within. I love doing that because it's very motivating, but they have to be the right type of person. Not everyone is a born manager. And I mean a born manager, meaning they understand how to put teams together and lead them forward. So I agree with you.
So let's just build on that for a moment there. And a lot of companies I mentioned before, they started by a couple of techies, but they've never had leadership experience. So themselves are not leaders. How do you work through the process of training and onboarding? I mean, is that something that you have to take on because you're an investor?
We do a lot of hand-holding when it comes to that. I do a lot of, I don't know if it's called teaching or therapy or
Coachable
lecturing,
therapy.
if you will. Yes, where I'm basically saying
Executive
like
parenting.
you have 40 people and no one is caring about HR processes, anything. It's time. And it's a lot of, why is it time? Why do we need this head count? Right. And especially in this AI world that's just, booming, people just think they can replace everyone. And I actually think you need more people that are more intuitive, that understand EQ, and can really understand the human part of things.
That's what scares me. That's what scares me with all these AI tools. I think that my general rule of thumb is use AI as a tool, not a crutch. And I see it a lot in the recruiting and hiring world because the pipeline is so massive. It's a fire hose. We're trying to drink out of a fire hose as recruiters here, and we're trying to find the most qualified applicants, a needle in a haystack. And that's actually a terrible analogy. It's a needle in a dust storm. I don't even know what it is, but it's like, how do you filter through it while still giving the time and attention to not miss those good candidates? At the same time, it's such an employer-driven market right now that employers have the pick of the litter. Why do I have to go to a B or a C player? Why do I have to look for somebody with potential versus someone staring me in the face? And that's what the technology is good for, to at least filter it. But what you're doing is you're losing out on the good ones. And it's really not sustainable right now. And it scares me. So are there like kind of these old school recruiting, hiring, interview questions to get to the crux if someone is going to be a value add for your company?
So for me, and it's harder for me to hire, Kass has been a much better kind of judge of talent. I think what I've learned over the years, it's always been about the soft skills. It's always been about, what's not on the resume. I used to be impressed with people who went to Harvard, right? Now I don't hire them for a bunch of different reasons. I used to be impressed when people said they worked at a certain company. But what you realize is the senior person who was at this big company has a lot of weaknesses you don't know about. And so what I try to do is understand, does this person know what they don't know? And do they know what their superpowers are? And when you look at great employees, they're the same as great entrepreneurs. They know their strengths and they're more than happy to talk about their weaknesses. We just had the Liquid Death board meeting, and nothing reminds me more of this as Mike Lazarow, who worked for Gary Vaynerchuk. He was a creative director. He's one of the greatest entrepreneurs I've ever worked with, and he's a creative director, right? He was not on paper built to build $1 billion business. But if you strip back why he's been successful, he knows his superpowers. He knows what he doesn't know. He has a beginner's mind, and he is all about empowering people to do their job, which he knows he can't do.
That's a tremendous one. So after doing 475 of these episodes, and I talked to incredibly experienced folks like yourself, the one common theme and question that these leaders asked during the interview, one way or another, is, Theo, how did you figure it out? They explained something, and now I want to know, what did you do and how did you figure it out? And through that line of questioning, they could really tell how their mind works and, how they unpack it. But there's another piece, because you guys use the term culture fit a lot. I despise that term. Fit means everyone should look, sound, and act the same. For me, it's almost like a quilt, right? It's like going back to the harmony analogy, where all these different pieces, they kind of come together, but when you pull back, you have this beautiful quilt there. But it's diversity of mindset, right? Everyone's values have to be aligned, right? From a values, good human perspective, but diversity of mindset and perspective. So Kass, how do you, when you're interviewing, you're getting into those soft skills, how do you explore the mindset and perspectives where people are coming from, and how that will blend in to be a value add in the teams that you're building?
So while you don't love the word fit, I think to better kind of explain how we come from it, like, I want to build a really good culture, right? I want to build a cult, right? The first 4 letters of culture, a cult. So for me, that is about having the same vision, values, and really being in the trenches. Because when you go from 0 to 1, that's the most important thing. So I'm going to be asking a lot of questions that have nothing to do with work. Like, I'm not going to get into personal HR stuff that I'm not supposed to.
Like what kind of questions?
I'm going to ask, like, what were some of the best memories you had growing up? And what were those traditions that you valued the most? Because I'm searching for what is their glue, right? What is their glue, and what could they possibly be coming here for? And I want to know immediately, are they looking for a community? Because I can tell you right now, I can build the best culture out there. And I can also guarantee that they won't leave, because I know I'll have people that they love.
So what's an example of transparency during one of those backfiring, where you're just like, oh shit, I can't believe they fucking said that?
Say it again? The back
well, when it backfired, when you ask a question, like, I can't believe somebody just said that to me.
Oh, I mean, I
crazy.
probably don't want to talk about some of these things. I mean,
we're not trying to out anybody here.
No, but there's been a lot of talk about, I've had people talk to me about someone dying, mental health issues, things like that, or parents that are having issues. But what you are trying to find out in a roundabout way, in a totally legal HR way, I just want to say that for all the listeners,
Compliance.
is, do they really understand what it means to be in a startup and to put everything into it? And what motivates them? Is it title? Is it money? Is it people? Is it laughing every day? And how can I figure that out?
Gary talks about that a lot too when he interviews too, is finding out what motivates people. And I do that as a recruiter, because that's the motivation. Because listen, recruiting is sales. I need to know when I get to the close, what was it?
What is it?
Are you looking for more money? Are you not happy in your job? Did you just get divorced? Like, whatever that is, I need to know. And I'm not using it against you. I'm using it with you to bring you back at the end of the process. Hey, remember when we first had that conversation? You said you didn't like X, Y, and Z where you are now. This opportunity is offering you that. What's the hesitation here? What is that? And once you could kind of come to terms with that and really be on the same page with somebody, you're relating to them. And that's when you start to see the fit right? If I want to use fit in a good way here, they're going to fit into our values. They're going to fit into our culture. And then when you use cult in the beginning of it, how do you remove the negative connotations of that and spin it in a positive way? We ain't drinking the Kool-Aid here, but we want everyone to be on the same page.
I think it's all about the experiences that you give them that are not necessarily about this is what we do for a living and get to work. I think it's about your own personalities and being 100% authentic as founders, as the leadership team and management team. You've got to, like, there's no difference in Mike's personality and my personality at work and at home. There's no difference. I'm not hiding anything. I'm not protecting anything. And so when you're building a cult, it is based on trust, right? That's the biggest lever here is trust. So, how do you have a positive, view of a cult? It's all the great things that come out of it. Like, I'm not trying to build something based on fear. I'm trying to build something based on hope and camaraderie and laughter.
Mike, I smell a title for the sequel here, building on the word cult here. The positive spin on cult. I'm going to long form it here, but a positive spin on cult. So I'm just curious here. I was going to save this to later. Sequel for this book, because you have to have ideas in the back burner here. What does part 2 look like? Give us a little sneak preview. Lucid Podcast.
Honestly, we're so close. We're so close to this. I mean, it came out in June, and we're still, we're still shoveling shit. We're doing tons of speaking. People are inviting us to speak, which is kind of a new thing for us. And we really haven't thought about it. One of the things as I hear you talk to Kass, which has been a really interesting conversation, because you really understand people and organizations and hiring, is, when you think of cults, you think of like people recruiting their friends, right? Which is the best companies, employees come from like employee recruit, like
referrals, yeah.
Because people don't want to work with people they don't like or people who aren't good, right? So who are the 3 people who are good at my last job? They're symbols at the company that take on a whole like life of their own, right? For us, it was bobbleheads and, these awards that Kass gave. They're rituals. You do things over and over again, like traditions, almost in a religious way, right? Our quarterly events, our giving back events. And I think that is the fodder for, I don't know if it's a book, but that's why organizations work, is because, it's not that we want you to be a fit and the same. The best organizations, you feel like you belong and you are with your people, and your individuality is able to be celebrated. So you're both
Amen.
The same and different. And that's what you see when in organizations that are all about kind of, celebrating differences, which is the best organizations in the world.
I love that perspective. Kass, let me ask you this. How do you scale that? That's easy to do with 50, 75, 100 people, but now you're getting into enterprise level in the thousands. Is that sustainable and scalable?
Yeah, just look at Salesforce. They do it. You wouldn't believe the awards and stuff that they do for their employees at anniversaries with stock options, title changes and the kind of celebrations. Absolutely. You might not think it's scalable. I did this tradition a long time ago. I think when I was 24 or 25, I gave everybody $100 and did a gift exchange. Easy to do, expensive, easy to do on my own dime when there's 5 or 6 of us. When we got up to 350 people, it didn't change. Everybody looked forward to it. People think that, especially founders, that things are not scalable. And I would say right now, don't give anything unless you think it will last forever, right? And that you will have the budget for it. And second, don't ever stop.
Things back is what she's saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you give it, you've given it.
The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah. And the second part is, go big when it comes to how you treat people.
Always put that first. So I have a little bit of feedback / question here. Why did you guys choose to go with the Netflix versus Blockbuster example in the book when this isn't something new versus going with an example from a case study perspective, something that was closer to you guys for that particular analogy of Blockbuster versus Netflix? That was the one part that was curious to me.
So I came up with that part of the book, and
yeah, blame Mike.
Despite what people think, we didn't write this for tech entrepreneurs. We didn't write it for VC-backed entrepreneurs because we just feel like VC-backed VC-backed entrepreneurs have a huge safety net. They often went to good schools. They can make a lot of money. We wrote this for the owner of a pizzeria, the owner of a salon, the owner of a staffing firm, a service business.
Mm-hmm.
And we tried to use examples that are universal and that are global and that people who are reading in London or elsewhere would understand. And so we stayed away in many cases from the techie stuff. And I'm often going back and looking at Netflix because they shouldn't have been Netflix, right? Like Blockbuster should have done that. And then
Or stomp them out. Yeah.
they shouldn't have been the streaming leader because they were sending DVDs in the mail to people.
I remember.
There were 5 companies that could have done that, including HBO at the time and Showtime and Blockbuster, right? But what they did was they pivoted when things were going well. You see this with like Facebook and Google and, you know, Microsoft and other like great tech companies, but you also see it with great service companies. And it's just the perfect example of pivots.
Power of the pivot.
They've done it. They did it so many times in huge ways. Like, I don't know if you remember, but when Reed announced the streaming, the stock went down 30% because people thought that they just cannibalized. And he says, no, we have to do this to get to the future. We have to let our customers download instead of getting DVDs. And he just stuck with it, even though his most important constituent, the shareholders, were throwing him out.
What a bold move. What a bold move. And thank you for sharing the background on that, because that one was spinning around in my head a little bit. So that perspective really helps. So I want to bring it home here. And I certainly want to talk about your philanthropic efforts, especially Cycle for Survival. And you guys talk about the bigger mission. Is that something that every company has to do, Kass? Like, do they have to have a philanthropic cause tied to it?
I think it was if you think about all the different, let's just call them glues that I used to build this positive cult, this was the strongest glue. Because you actually, you go across any department, any team, doesn't matter what everyone's doing, and you're doing something for good. And with this cause, which was obviously very close to us because we knew one of the founders who started it, we could lead by example. People could feel that they were giving back. It wasn't just writing a check. It wasn't just dropping things off. And I tell every single company that we invest in, it's the biggest glue that you can do, is to pause and think bigger than yourself and say, how can we as a company, as a group, do something for good?
I absolutely love it. So let's bring it home. Well, actually backtrack for a second there. And even if there's a cause, like you can quickly identify it, as your company scales, just by law of averages and the way this crazy world works, someone in your company is going to be affected by something pretty shitty.
That's right.
And you're going to find a cause for people to rally behind and scale up fundraising. And what better way to do that? I absolutely love it. So I'm going to ask you both this question. Mike, what's keeping you up at night these days?
So I sleep incredibly well. It's one of my superpowers. And so nothing's keeping me up at night, but what I'm thinking about a lot is cash flow businesses. We haven't talked about it, but we've been buying businesses. We own a staffing firm primarily in healthcare, but doing other stuff now called the Moraine Group. And so, I basically was sitting up one night saying, why are we trying to reinvent the future with every business? Why don't we just grow businesses that have happy customers and great employees, and we could run our playbook. And so we've been spending a lot of our time thinking about our life instead of just supporting these 100 entrepreneurs on the venture side, but being majority owner. And so that's something that, we're putting a lot of our playbook, the cheat codes, into motion with these businesses that we're, looking to buy.
So Kass, building on that, thoughts on betting on the horse versus the jockey?
So here, I would always bet on the jockey, but Mike's going to bet on the horse. So it's a little bit of us cheating because we're looking, we have our own lanes and we're looking at both sides. I always like to make sure it's the team that's actually or the person that's actually going to be able to cope with this business and cope with this kind of work. And Mike's going to always look at, is this the right company, the right business model, the right time, and the right market?
Isn't that the magic of you two? Isn't that
It
what
is
it's
the
all
magic.
about? That's the
You
magic,
just got
folks.
it. That's
Folks,
the
that's the
magic.
magic. This is the best tag team since the Killer Bees in wrestling over here. I absolutely love it. All right, Kass, what's the single greatest piece of career advice that you've ever received that you pay forward daily, weekly?
Stop thinking and do more doing. Like literally just stop thinking. Just do it. Like I remember exactly where I was when my mentor said this. Enough thinking, enough analyzing, enough spreadsheets. Do it.
I think it was a wise man named Nike that said that, right? Just
Well,
do it, right?
Definitely on that part.
But it's procrastination.
Well, just
that
trying to perfect the business model, the plan, and
process paralysis.
Yes, it's just enough. You have an idea. If it passes, like you already mentioned, we have 6 questions that kind of say, okay, green light this idea, but then go, jump.
Do it. Mike, what about you from your perspective? Best career advice?
I mean, the best career advice, and I just gave it today, is your network is your net worth. And when you start out, you have no net worth and you have no network. But that network, if you invest in people, will pay off. And I look back at our investments very early on in our relationship with Gary Vaynerchuk, who, this book would not have been a success without him. We did a 3-hour live stream. We're introduced by him to, I think, hundreds of thousands of people. It started out as we were just 2 entrepreneurs and 3, like with Kass, like trying to figure it out. And we invested not only in the business relationship, but we'd spend holidays together, and he came and visited. We'd at House in the Caribbean, and like, you just invest in relationships that make you feel good and provide value to your life, not in a transactional way, just because you do it. If you do that over 30 years, you're going to wake up and some of your people are going to be like commissioners of leagues and maybe presidents of countries and
crazy.
And those are the people who you're going to do stuff with over and over and over again.
I swear by that. And it sounds cliche that your network is your net worth, but it's so true. I mean, I hold relationships in the high. We wouldn't be having this conversation on this podcast today if it wasn't through mutual friends that connected us and
100%.
vouch for me, who I am, the show that I do, what I stand for. And I want everyone out there, listen, there's very few times when you need to scorch earth and drop napalm on a relationship. I want you to think about it multiple times, sleep on it before you do that. I see so many young people and older people too make this mistake where they don't take a beat. They don't pause. I got fired by Gary Vee after 7 months at VaynerMedia, and 10 years later, I have a deeper relationship with him and helping out Vayner and helping out other things too. If I decided to scorch earth and storm out of that office, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. There's zero chance. He'd be like, Adam is blacklisted. He's in the shithole. Don't even talk to him. But that's not what it is, because I saw the long-term value, but I also took accountability that I didn't do something right 10 years ago. And I built on that. And if you could have the maturity, then you could certainly build on that. All right. Last but not least, you guys, if anybody picks up this book, if anybody goes to Wikipedia, if anybody sees the tons of businesses that you've built and sold, and the bottom line number on that, they could look at that number as success. But Mike and Kass Lazarow, at this stage of your life, how do you define success?
For me, it's helping others. I like to pass it on. I am a teacher by heart, and I just want to help as many people as I can and give it back.
Love it. Mike, bring us home.
For me, it's simple. It's what it's meant all along, which is freedom. Freedom to do what I want, to make the mistakes I want, to be the schmuck that I am, and not have to sit behind a desk all day, every day, doing someone else's work. And I've always been interested in entrepreneurship, not because of the money, although I'm not going to poo-poo the money. It's been great, but freedom. And although we worked as hard as we worked, I think we were able to create kids and a relationship and some friendships, which will be the more important things that we look back on, when our time comes, versus the money.
I love it.
And we're capitalists. I love money. So don't say that
money's a fuel.
I don't love money.
Money's a fuel to your options. Money's a fuel to opportunities. And I say this all the time as parents, our legacy is going to be leaving this world a better place by raising kids who are better than us.
That's right.
I say it all the time. And that's my success metric. Am I raising good fucking humans?
Exactly.
That's what I'm doing here. Mike and Kass Lazarow, I want to thank you so much your time, your energy, your wisdom for putting this book together here. Shoveling Shit, a love story about entrepreneurship's messy path to success. Oh, I'm not showing it on camera. There we go, because the screen's all weird here. But I want everyone to pick it up. It's on Amazon. It's anywhere you could find it. We're going to link it up in the comments here. Where else could folks find you? Where could they connect? Where could they learn more?
Definitely come to, any social media channel, Kass and Mike, or go to kassandmike.com. Easy enough.
And everyone out there, if this show meant something to you, leave a review, a rating. It goes a long way. Big shout out to Mike and Kass Lazarow. Good shout out to my friend Chris Adamo for connecting the dots here. Everyone over at the Digital Savvy team, Maha and Rachel, thank you so much for putting this together. Remember, you could find out more at thepodcast.com. Follow us on all the social media channels. Remember, be good to yourself, be better to others, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.